Good afternoon. I'm Clara Chu, Department Chair of the Library and Information Studies here at UNCG. And I'm delighted to welcome you to the second iDeal Summit. iDeal representing information, diversity, engagement, access, and libraries. And this year we're focusing on a particular theme, and that theme is LGBTQIA, out on the open shelves, serving hidden communities. And for some of you who may not be familiar with all the different letters of the acronym, there is a handout in your packet. And those acronyms stand for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, transsexual, questioning, two-spirited, queer, intersex, and asexual, and allies. So many of us are included in this community in terms of serving different roles and addressing the information needs. The reason that we have the iDeal Summit is that as a department, we wanted to create a special space. And that space is to invite our community and the professionals who are out in the community also to come and engage with us. So we have 3 goals with iDeals, and that is we want to create dialogue, a space that we can exchange and connect with each other at least once a year. We also want to be able to have action take place. That means that you have the opportunity to volunteer and participate and offer the services of your library to our students and our community. And we also have the opportunity to share some of our knowledge and experiences with you. So engagement and reciprocity is the action part. That's the second goal. And the third goal is transformation. We want to be able to talk about the key issues of iDeal and to be able to think about how we can continue to enhance our services, what we need to learn, and how we need to be able to act and to ensure equity and information services. And these goals of iDeal represent our core values. Our core values of the department are advocacy, authentic practice, collaboration, creativity, diversity and inclusiveness, and entrepreneurship. And I wanted to just describe 2 of those core values. 1, advocacy. We believe information is power, and act and speak on behalf of equity of access to information resources and services. And the second is diversity and inclusiveness. We include diverse communities and points of view to enrich and inform research, teaching, and practice to ensure full representation, participation, value, and access by students, faculty, and staff, and to challenge all forms of inequity and bias. One of the wonderful opportunities that we have on our campus is to engage with the various units on campus and the community at large. And one of those units is the UNCG Libraries. The UNCG Libraries has been a wonderful partner in various initiatives. And one is the UNCG Libraries and LIS lecture series. So the panel this afternoon that will begin at 1:30 is part of the fall lecture for the series for this academic year. So what I'd like to do is now welcome Roseanne Basirjian, who is the head of the library, the dean of the UNCG Libraries, to give you a welcome.
Hello, everyone. As Clara said, I am the Dean of the University Libraries. I'm Roseanne Basirjian. I'm very happy to welcome you on behalf of Linda Brady, our Chancellor, and David Perrin, our Provost and Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. The Elliott University Center, where you are, is a perfect venue for the 2010 iDeal Summit, and I hope that you've been enjoying all of the amenities that it has to offer. We love to welcome events such as the iDeal Summit, as it fits right into the many major areas of the university's strategic plan, namely our very strong focus on equity, diversity, access, and community engagement. In response to our plan, we are extremely pleased to announce that a search is currently underway for UNCG's first Chief Diversity Officer. Also, many units on campus are committed to an enhanced focus on diversity issues as they impact recruitment and retention of faculty and students. UNCG has also received the Carnegie classification of community engaged campus, and that's something that we are very, very proud and excited about. As the Dean of the University Libraries, we have truly moved forward in our response to the diverse world that we live in. We have appointed a diversity committee, actively working to ensure that our staff is provided with opportunities to be exposed to broad issues, especially through our film series. We have also appointed a reference and diversity librarian, Gerald Holmes, who is here in the back. I hope you all get a chance to and he is, along with everyone else in the library, in the process of writing our very first library diversity strategic plan. We have always supported diverse thought and content through our collection development practices, and we have also interwoven collaboration with international librarians from Thailand and China who spend time in our library sharing their skills and perspectives with our library faculty and staff. The panel you will hear shortly is part of the Fall 2010 UNCG Libraries and LIS lecture series, as Clara mentioned, and that's one of the many ways we collaborate with the LIS department. Other ways include the ACE Scholars Program, and you saw a few posters on that in the other room. That's supported by an IMLS grant, as well as the Teacher Librarian Pilot Project, focusing this year on information technology and special collections in university archives, and there was a poster on that as well. Finally, I want to welcome you as a member of the LIS Advisory Committee, which has worked hard on strategic planning this year because diversity and inclusiveness are core values of the LIS program. So as you can see, the theme of this year's IDEAL Summit is relevant to the focus not only of UNCG through our strategic plan, but also to the goals of the university libraries, the LIS department, and the LIS Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne. This afternoon, we're going to be doing various things, and you've been able to see in the program that a lot of it has to do with the emphasis of the goals, which is to dialogue, to talk about potential action that we can follow up with in our own particular institutions, and also issues that relate to transformation. And so to tell us more about the dialogue aspect of today's activities, Dr. Nora Bird.
My students are planted throughout the audience. In your packet, you have a sheet that says dialogue questions. The dialogues this afternoon are based on a model called the World Cafe. Is anyone in the audience aware of that particular model? How many of you came to the IDEAL Summit last year? Oh, just a few. Okay. The World Cafe model relies on a couple of people that we're calling facilitators who are there to help move the questions, but are not there to actually lead. They're actually there as participants, just as everyone else in the room will be. And you have on the front of your packet a color-coded dot. Okay. I'm not going to give you the answer to the code right now because you'll forget by the time we're ready to go. But at the end of the talks, I will have a slide up, and it will tell you what room to go to if you're a red dot, etc. Okay? And you will be there with one of the speakers and a facilitator. And we're going to be gathering your thoughts about what the LIS program needs to do, what libraries in general need to do, what the information world needs to do to better serve and create community with the group of LGBTQIA folks. Yay! I think I remembered all the letters. I'll be up here again with that slide telling everybody where to go at the end of the talk. And I don't see Dean Shunk. So I'll turn it back to Claire.
Today wouldn't be possible without a lot of support, and we've already talked about the partnership with UNCG Libraries, but we also would like to thank the planning committee. So if I could have you stand up. And most of them are listed. Great, thank you. And they are listed in your packet. As well, we have the media team of Dan Quoney and Nick Honeycutt, who are up here in the front. So thank you to them. And also the faculty. If I could have the faculty stand up. I know some of them are in the other room clearing some things up. Wonderful, thank you. And we also were very fortunate this year to have particular contributors. And those contributors include EBSCO, OCLC, and Neil Schumann. Neil Schumann is offering all IDEAL participants, whether they're virtual or here physically at UNCG, 25% off on the book by James Murdoch and Jack Martin, Serving Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Questioning Teens, How to Do It Manual for Librarians. And also they provided a copy that we can raffle off. So if you haven't put your name into the raffle, it's at the registration desk, so I welcome you all to do that. And I now would like to welcome another person who is very supportive of our activities here in the department and have provided a lot of the financial support for this summit, and that is our Dean, Dean Dale Shunk of the School of Education.
Thank you, Clara. I want to echo your welcome to everyone and welcome to this wonderful event here at UNCG. This is one of quickly becoming one of our signature events here at UNCG and sponsored by the School of Education. And it's wonderful to see this great turnout. This idea of reaching out to diverse communities just fits perfectly with our mission and our goals, because that's what a School of Education is all about, that we reach out to different communities in different ways. So your theme is right on target with us, and it's really a real big pleasure to see this good turnout and to say that we are supporting it in the way that we can. So I hope you have a good afternoon. It looks like there's really a good program that has been planned, and I know a lot of work has gone into this. And people who have worked on this have done so with gusto and are very excited about it. So thank you again and welcome.
Thank you, Dean Shunk. I wanted to just do one housekeeping item, and that is that there was some money found in the area. So if you have lost any money, to please go to the registration desk, and if you can describe what it is, then it's yours. Okay.
Is it green?
Can't let out too many hints. Another aspect of today's session is the poster exhibit and showcase. And we were very fortunate, in addition to the actual posters that were here physically, to have various virtual presentations. And also included in that showcase are 2 authors. We were able to have Ellen Greenblatt, whose second edition of an anthology is coming out this December, and it's the book Serving LGBTQ Library and Archives Users, Essays on Outreach, Service, Collections, and Access, published by McFarland and Company. And then also James Murdoch, one of the co-authors of the book that I had indicated earlier, Serving Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Questioning Teens, published by Neil Schumann, was also part of that showcase. The showcase winners, we are selecting 5 winners who will receive prizes. They will be announced at 4 p.m. Those 5 posters will be exhibited again in the pre-function room in the auditorium area, where we will have our break and some cake to celebrate the event. So please continue with the events, and then make sure to reconnect with us during the break so we can congratulate the poster winners. We also encourage you to give us feedback. We would like feedback for the planning of next year's IDEAL Summit, and that feedback would be by filling out your evaluation form. So if you fill out your evaluation form before the end of the program for the day, then please go to Kirkland, which is the room next door, and you'll be able to deposit your evaluation form, or identify one of us who are the coordinators, and you will receive a keychain. A keychain with a whistle from UNCG Library. So that will be your gift for turning in your evaluation form. And what I would like to do now is close the welcomes and start the program with the UNCG Libraries LIS Fall Lecture. And to do that, I'd like to call Kimberly Lutz up, and she is the Director of Marketing and Outreach with UNCG Libraries.
Hello, it's great to see this many people here. I'm really happy that how this has come together, and thank you, Clara. It was Clara's idea originally to have this topic as our ULLIS lecture for the fall, and then it morphed into the IDEAL Summit as well, so it's a good bringing together of a lot of different voices. As many of you know, a number of years ago, Dean Roseanne Bazirjan started a program for the university libraries and the LIS to bring in notable speakers once a semester. It's an ongoing series designed to offer continuing education for library staff and exposure to emerging trends in the library and scholarly communications world to LIS students. And this semester, again, we're mixing it up. Instead of a single speaker, we get 5. And since there are 5, I'm going to keep my introductions very brief so the 5 of them can speak. So today's topic, again, is LGBTQIA, out on the open shelves, serving hidden communities. And our panel includes 2 outside speakers who have traveled to Greensboro to take part in the summit. Polly Thistlethwaite, Head of Public Services at CUNY's Graduate Center Library, who is taking a break from her sabbatical to be with us today. She's the chronicler of the history of the lesbian Her Story archives in New York City, and she contributed a chapter on that to Jim Carmichael's book a few years ago. We also have Mario Asensio, whose last name I may be mispronouncing. Okay. And his careers in libraries have taken him from public libraries to academic libraries to special libraries, and he's currently the director of the Corcoran Library in Washington, D.C. Mario is also a recent past president of Reforma. And we have a renowned expert from our own LIS on the panel. Jim Carmichael's research has done much to uncover and celebrate the history of the LGBT community within libraries. And we're also pleased to welcome one of UCG's LIS students, a scholar, Trey Middlebrooks, and moderating today, Nathan Bellew, who is UNCG's coordinator of LGBTQI health at the Wellness Center. So with 5 people on the panel again, that's it for my introductions, and I welcome you all.
While we're getting settled, we'll start by just kind of talking about how the panel discussion will proceed. Each of our panelists is going to have 15 minutes to share with the audience on various topics. And please reserve your comments or questions to the end. There'll be a 15-minute opportunity at the end for you to engage the panelists with your questions and thoughts about what they have to share. The panelists will be focusing on three areas which are really the focus of the summit, being dialogue, action, and transformation. And so we'll go ahead and begin with the panelists, and we'll start with Dr. Carmichael. And we'll start, first of all, with that area of dialogue. And the question that we'll pose to the panelists regarding this is, what are your concerns, ideas, and solutions regarding LGBTQIA information needs?
Okay, well, I always get to be the history pill. And I'm a historian. And maybe you'd like to sit down and I'll stand up. Maybe that'll be the way to do this. Yeah, that'd work. And we'll just leave the feather bowl on the table.
If you want to signal me, I'll move.
Okay, well, let's see. Is that not going to work?
Yeah, we're streaming right now.
Good. Will you go to Are we okay? Okay. Now that's going to be a problem. So maybe I better sit back down. Yeah. Okay. Well, these are technical things. I'm not just.
We're just playing musical chairs.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've been complaining for years, and Polly knows this is true about all of these damn initials. LGBTQIA. I keep on thinking we ought to just be other, or them, those people, But I always, every time anybody asks me, so what makes you gay? I always wonder, because, I live with 3 cats. Does that make me gay? I can't leave furniture alone or fabric untouched. Does that make me gay? I don't know. But I love the story about Ernest Thesiger, the English character actor who came to Hollywood in the 30s, and he described his experiences on World War I going to the front as, oh my dear, the noise. And I said, the people. That's a very camp gay comment. I like that. So I want to tell you how we got here. All of these issues, gay marriage, everything, are not new issues. And pretty much what I'm telling, let's see, which is forward? This way?
It looks like it.
Looks like it. Okay, let's try it. Yeah. Gays in the military. When I was coming out, the big name on the front page of the paper was Leonard Matlovich. And he was fired from the Army, released because he came out. And here we are, all these years later. This is 1976, the same year that Christopher Isherwood wrote Christopher and His Kind, which at the time was a big scandal because it was the first book where someone had come out and written about being homosexual and kind of sounded positive about it. It just wasn't done. And then as far as gay marriage goes, he never gets credit for it these days, but Michael McConnell, who was a librarian at the University of Minnesota in 1970, and this is long before Stonewall, by the way, he goes in front of ALA's General Assembly, 12 to 15,000 people sitting there, and asks for, he and his lover Jack Baker have applied for a marriage license and been granted a marriage license by some small town in Minnesota, and he was fired when the news, from his job, when the news got out in the press. And of course, ALA never did anything about it because they're always amicus curiae, they're always friend of the court, not a participant in any lawsuit. But Michael and Jack had a lot to do with the formation of the ALA task force, which, I need to remind you, is the first professional gay task force in the world. And it is not by accident. And it wasn't, us evil left-wing librarians who did it. Who it was the public. And as perfect as it should be said. I met our founder through this man, Louis Cruz, who was working at Fort Valley, Georgia, with his partner Ernest, and he started Integrity, one of the 5 religious organizations started in the early late 60s, early 70s to address the fact that theology didn't mesh well with our top-down religions. And Ludi is quite a hoot. He also founded a gay listserv, which was for scholars, which is still operating. Employment discrimination was with us. We had Frank Kameny, who was fired from the federal government. He was chief astronomer for the U.S. government, fired in the McCarthy purges, along with about 200 Library of Congress employees, all male. Women didn't count. They were doubly invisible if they were lesbians. And so they didn't even get fired. But Frank Kameny started a 20-year pursuit of, number one, a law degree, and he became the person who overturned, among other things, the federal government's employee discrimination ban. Political activism. While I was at American University in 1965, I was there 1 year. I was busy melting down as a freshman over my identity. Barbara Giddings was down the street picketing the White House for homosexual rights with Frank Kameny and some others. And if I had only known it, I might have been saved, but instead I spent 3 months in the booby hatch. And it was quite a year. And Barbara Giddings was an activist. She worked in libraries, but she never got a library degree. And she was the person who decided that, you know, what we really need to do is get libraries involved in activism. Israel Fishman, who is the man sitting at the back of this photo with a mustache, was the actual person who founded the task force. But shortly thereafter, and Barbara's sitting up front on your left, he turned it over to Barbara because Barbara had a lot of experience as editor of the Daughters of Bilitis East Coast journal, The Ladder. And they stepped at the 1971 Dallas ALA conference. We had the Hug a Homosexual booth. And I have heard a story about Alma Rautzung, who, by the way, was then writing under a pseudonym because you had to back in those days. She and Barbara got on the elevator and were having in a clutch, and Jack Dalton, librarian at University of Virginia, delightful old Southern gentleman, got on the elevator with them and rode up a few floors and just kind of never said a word. You know, he just didn't say a word. He was much too polite, and they're just sitting there locked in this embrace. It was, I can just imagine it happening. And Israel crowned Barbara queen of the task force in 1971, and she stayed there until 1986. She ran things, and she had the best programs in ALA. People would come from all over ALA to see her programs because they were just so much fun. And she gave the first book award out of her own pocket pretty much for several years to Alma Rautzung, who then went under the name Isabel Miller, for her book, A Place for Us, which the publishers wouldn't touch. It was a pioneer story about two women moving west. It is now known as Patience and Sarah, and it was the first great lesbian title in our canon. And because of that, I believe, publishing became really important, and Barbara, in her 1979 essay, Combating Lies in Libraries, said that most young gay people, like me, identified, they looked for themselves in the library because there was nowhere else where they could talk about it. And when they went to the shelves, what did they find? Negative images propitiated by the American Psychiatric Association. And so Barbara and Frank Kameny picketed the APA convention, and they got finally, after years, they got this guy, the man in the mask, to identify as a psychiatrist who was gay. Because up until that point, the DSM had always said it is a disease, and homosexuality is a disease that can be cured either through a 12-step program or some other variation. And of course, you know that's still around. And finally, because of her efforts and Frank's efforts, they overturned that classification. It became an orientation. And just to let you know, the Daughters of Bilitis 1 year was headed by this beautiful woman, Ernestine Eckstein. And it's a pseudonym, and I don't think Barbara knew her real name, but it was never told. She was president of the Daughters of Bilitis nationally, and she actually, her picture appeared on the front cover of the Daughters of Bilitis, but her name never did. That was how you existed back in those days. This couple, who you may recognize from recent events on the steps of San Francisco's State House, Dell and Phyllis applied and won a marriage license in California during one of those weeks when it was legal before they took it away, and poor Dell died. And it's just so sad, but they were also winners of the third Gay Book Award for their book, Lesbian Woman. And I should mention, too, in this early period that we had activists who were really outrageous. And my favorites were the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. And they have marvelous names. My favorite is Sister Missionary Position. I almost brought a list to read, but we'd never be through today. This is Sister up in the top, and they're just wild. And they go around San Francisco in roller skates, and they do incredibly important work in AIDS education. They have a video on their website, which you ought to see right now, about bullying and about feeling good about yourself, I think in response to all of the teen suicides, very important. And just to let you know that libraries are not necessarily liberal bastions. When this cover appeared, when Marilyn Miller of our department was president of ALA, this cover appeared on American Libraries magazine. The task force had been marching at every summer ALA since day one. And right after Stonewall, we had a gay march every year. And when we met in San Francisco, we had the Dykes on Bikes and, everybody. The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence and just wonderful stuff. And but when this cover appeared, we were in a conservative backlash. And all of a sudden, the letters columns of American Library were filled with hate-filled letters talking about, it's so horrible. When I saw American Library's cover, I was ashamed of being a librarian. So leave. I mean, there has to be someplace. The straight people have taken over business. They've taken over everything else. There has to be a place for us. Why not libraries? And I want to close by talking about community activism. This woman, Marie Kuda, gave programs almost every year at ALA, and she was a great supporter of the task force. She's still around. She's still in Chicago, and she's on the Chicago GLBT Hall of Fame. She was inducted in '71, but Coods, as we call her, gave a talk a couple of years ago in Chicago, and she said, we did all of the stuff we did, and I think this is so important, living as we do in a super sensitive, hyper politically correct, polarized age. And that is, she said, we didn't do this for the glory of it. We didn't do it for the glory and the fame. We did it for the fun of it. And I think that's a very important message to get across to the public. Thank you.
I'd like to stand up here. Can you hear me? First of all, I think we need to thank Jim for the decorations. This here is a chicken feather boa, and it's red. And this is a drape for the podium. And I want to thank Jim for spicing things up for us today here while we're streaming. And it's so much appreciated. When he mentioned that red chicken feather boa, I had no idea that it would be what it is.
From my doctor.
It was a gift. Mike is not working.
Flawless. Flawless. My doctor fantastic. I love my doctor, and if his partner believes him, he's fine.
Look out.
Got you on screen.
Well, my name's Polly Thistlethwaite, and I am a librarian at the CUNY Graduate Center in New York. But I'm also a lesbian archivist
and and a lover of queer archives, and that's what I've been invited to talk about today. I'm gonna do a brisk walk through the queer archival timeline from my, here are the excuses. It's my culture-bound point of view. Certainly, my view is limited, and I'm omitting much. I learn something every day about queer archives. Yet it was what I was offered to talk about, but I just want to say this is a spotty outline that presses the limits of my understanding. I think it's really important to talk about the structure of archives and queer archives here in this instance, because in order to be an information literate person and a good researcher, you have to understand how information is structured. So I like to pay attention to the structure of archives, and I kind of start on the queer archival timeline with what many Westerners position as the earliest public archive interested in sexual variation, and that was the Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Science in Berlin. It was founded in 1919. It was destroyed in 1933 by the National Socialists, but for the years 1919 to 33, Germany hosted many political efforts, actually even before 1919, for what we now recognize as queer rights. And Hirschfeld was a founder of the field of sexology, which based argument for social progress around sexual difference as defined by the sciences. And the sciences, and in Germany, documentation is valued in the sciences and in Germany. So of course the Institute for Sexual Science had an extensive library and a sexual ethnological archive, an archive of case study. This was attacked and destroyed. The party was over in 1933. German scholars, immigrants from World War II, were also instrumental in development of the field of anthropology, and I'll point to Franz Boas, who immigrated from Germany and founded programs at Columbia University and New York's National History Museum, mentoring American students including Margaret Mead, Ruth Benedict, Zora Neale Hurston, Alfred Kroeber, Edward Sapir, at least the first couple of whom established the study of sexual practice in anthropology as an important cultural feature. In the post-World War I and World War II era, following anthropological case study, colonial excavation, extraction, and distribution of exotic cultural artifact and photography gave rise, and the rise of the queer press, and the expansion of printed photographs and filmed porn offered private collectors something tangible and personally rewarding to collect. So a lot of artifacts ended up in private hands. The expansion of worldwide travel allowed the well-heeled colonial to collect first-hand experience too, as well as object. And intercultural sexual variation and collecting souvenirs of these encounters. I'm thinking of travelers like Edward Carpenter and his posse doing this kind of collecting. The 1945 establishment of the Kinsey Institute in Indiana, of all places, established American sexual science, and Kinsey's polyvalent take on sexual variation involved a big archival component, again, in the form of case study, self-documentation, colonial exploit, and porn. And sometimes these elements of the archive are very difficult, they're complicated and difficult to piece apart. How many have seen the movie about Kinsey? About a quarter of the room. In this latest biography of Kinsey, he's depicted as a hero, which is really very interesting. He has been vilified. With the homophile movements in the 50s, and I know the United States and Britain and Germany, those are the ones I'm most familiar with, these movements attempted again to legitimize same-sex sexual behavior through scientific, religious, and moral argument. And one of the homophile organizations, Jim showed a slide of Barbara and or Dell and Phil Martin, who are closely associated with the Daughters of Bilitis. but a companion organization called One challenged in the 50s the United States mailing laws, so that the publications from the homophile organizations were the first that were distributed nationally by the mail. Before their challenge to these postal laws, any magazine or publication with homosexual content could not be distributed across state lines via the mail. So this gave rise to a new form of distribution for homosexual culture. Anyhow, these homophile organizations, the DOB and the Mattachine and One, all formed libraries and archives in conjunction with their offices on the East and West Coasts. And they formed programs, and they made press releases, and they invited people in to discover, to explore certain questions. They all used their offices, or office space if they had them, and homes if they didn't, to collect archives and put forward their movement work with research and argumentation built on archival documents. The One archive stood independently through the 60s and 70s and was supported by community activists. And last week it announced its permanent affiliation with the University of Southern California. So kind of tripping through things, in 1983, John D'Amelio's Sexual Politics, Sexual Communities, this book, kind of is the first sort of touchstone in the field of queer studies. I mean, there have been other like kind of sexual scientific studies before, but D'Amelio's Social History in '83 was sort of the first of its kind. And when I came into this world, it was in 1986, when I moved to New York and decided it would be professionally appropriate and maybe I would meet some girls if I went to work at the Lesbian History Archives, which was then in Joan Nessel's apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. The Lesbian History Archives had been since '73 a decidedly community-based organization concerned with the memory, recovery, and recuperation of lesbian lives, the visibility and memory of which was viewed as essential to the success of GLBT liberation. In '73, with the archive's founding, it was when bookstores, festivals, music, sports teams, and collectives were all doing the project of lesbian institution building and queer nation building. Archives and visibility are at the core of liberation movement ideals, and they continue to be today. But we are experiencing, I think, a significant modification in the way we organize gender, identity, visibility, and in the way we organize queer archives, queer archival material. So, I started with about 4 kinds of archive, but now I think there are maybe 6. So I'm gonna kind of try to outline six kinds of archive and then give examples. And then later on, maybe you can think about the queer collections that you know about and how they might fit or might not fit into my little scheme here. But there's the private collection, which I mentioned. There's an archive in Paris that's run by 2 crazy guys on the outskirts of Paris in their home, and it's the archive that students and scholars use because the academies don't collect, the libraries don't collect in that area so much. And there's a Lila archive in Berlin that's it's a private collection. Ursula Siliga is caretaking the archives of the East German queer movements right before the wall fell. It's in her house and under her care. Those are private collections. Then there's the homophile organization collection, which I was talking about. And these kinds of collections, the private and the organizational collections, have often been adopted by research institutions. So these private and organizational collections also often form the core of the research institutions. Now there's the 1947 Kinsey Institute in Indiana that was founded by Dr. Kinsey. But then there was a long stretch between 47 and I think 1988, when Cornell University became the first American university to adopt a queer archive, and that was with the collections of David Goodstein and Bruce Bowler, who were involved in the publication of the gay weekly magazine, The Advocate. And the Treader collection in Minnesota follows that pattern. It was Gene Treader who collected the stuff, and he donated it to Minnesota in 2001. So it's a private collection in a research institution. I should also mention the New York Public Libraries, kind of belated for the East Coast adoption of the Gay Switchboard, or the International Gay Information Center collection in '94, kind of late for us. And in '94, '95, the New York Public Library curated this exhibit called Becoming Visible, which we kind of joke was called Becoming Invisible, because the exhibit was curated in great part not from their own collection, but from the collections of, say, Cornell and the Lesbian History Archives and the Gay and Lesbian Community Center Archive downtown, and they didn't really want to highlight that. The other thing is that so you know, there wasn't a lot of focus on the collections from which that exhibit came, and I and some of my friends became vocal critics of that institution. They also, it wouldn't have been so bad except for they made a ton of money off that exhibit. Like, the exhibit that they did produced at that time more money than they had ever made off, you know, donations, advertising, that kind of thing. It's what it is.
What did they do with the money?
It went to, you know, help them make a better library, public library. Yeah.
No multi-ethnic involvement either.
Not much. Not much, but the little queer archives around also served as an index for the people who curated that exhibit to what was in their own collection. There were people who had worked in the archives and were like, oh, this looks like kind of queer content to me, and made a note of it in the Lesbian History Archives file, say, and then the curators went like, oh, that's there? Oh, that's in our collection. Well, we'll go trot that out. But so it was an index to their own collection, you see what I'm saying? So then there's the community-based organizations like the Lesbian History Archives, the Mazer Lesbian Collection in California, Chicago's Gerber Hart, the Schwules Museum, and Spinnboden Archive in Berlin. They get some government support, but they're still a very community-based organization. I mean, there are a ton of them. The Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archive in Toronto, Washington, D.C.'s oral history thing, China's Abai Library and Archive in Beijing, which doesn't have a website, but has like a Bin Lang's apartment where where people come to do research. Other successful archives have hybridized, or sort of like joined. They're now kind of community-based and also part of a research institution. I mentioned the One Archive, now part of USC, that's Southern California. The San Francisco Bay Area Gay Lesbian Historical Society, we call it SF Bagels in New York. but they hybridized, or they created a working relationship in '91 with the San Francisco Public Library, when the San Francisco Public got this donation from Hormel, the meat guy, to create a queer archival space in the San Francisco Public. And there were some of the donors to the San Francisco, the SF Bagels archive, that wanted to be in this public archive. You can kind of, Dell and Phil wanted their collections. So a lot of their collections went over to the San Francisco archive, and then other people who didn't want to put their legacy in the public collections stayed in the Historical Society collections. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of other varieties of hybrid. Commercial database project like EBSCO's LGBT Life is based on
several community-based archives and research institutions. And oral history has always been a mainstay of queer archival practice. Oral history is huge in terms of representation. It's had to be justified as a form of evidence, basis for research and queer studies. I would also suggest, though, that the type of material in these archives vary. Mainstream archives kind of have to follow more or less the letter of the law when they get a donation. Somebody who brings in the collection of a lover who has died does not have legal rights to the objects or to the copyright of those collections. Now, the community-based archives will keep that collection. People who want to use that collection, say for a film, might have restrictions placed on them or burdens placed on them about use of that kind of material because it's in a shady legal area. It's not deeded. But mainstream institutions often will only accept or process and share material that is legally recognized. But queer relationships, not being, oh, I dinged myself. That's good. I was wondering, like, is my time good? No. All right. So to wrap up, everybody has to work to put together an archive. It's not a passive receptive act. It's very self-conscious. There are tons of incredible examples of archival creation going on in China. There's Cui Zhen, the DV maker, who uses a lot of oral history interview in his work. Joe Jeffries does this incredible oral history drag performance research in New York City. He's this adjunct prof for NYU, makes no money, and goes out and does these fabulous little community oral history projects where he brings the queens in and plays their old films and stuff. It's outrageous. And then there's this ACT UP oral history project where Sarah Schulman and Jim Hubbard got a bunch of money to just go and do oral history. So it's something that we have to, that is very self-consciously created and created only with the support and critique of those of us who care. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Polly. Next, we'd like to invite Mario Asensio to speak. Would you like to come to the podium as well? And I'm going to take the bell with me in case I have to.
Okay. The clock doesn't work.
The clock doesn't work.
And I have a timer here, so excuse me. I want to first of all thank the UNGC libraries and the UNCG LIS department for this wonderful program. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? Is it on? Okay, now? Okay, great. So I want to thank the department, the library here. I also want to thank, in particular, the IDEAL Planning Committee and Dr. Chu for the invitation to participate today. I was invited to speak today about my professional career as a gay Latino male, and when Clara called me, Dr. Chu called me to invite me, I was like, I'm gay? No. No. So I turned to my husband, and no. And well, I was really excited to be here. It's interesting because when I was in grad school, 11, 12 years ago, one of the papers that I wrote for my personnel class, my HR class, was on GLBT issues, and it was on hiring and best practices for the gay community, gay librarianship. And I looked at the task force and knew that it was like the first. I'm so proud to be a librarian because it was the first library association that had a GLBT component to it. It's so awesome. And I too also remind librarians about that, and other professionals as well. My career has been a career of library advocacy and giving back to the community. It's been filled with challenges, as well as with opportunities. And so I am, it's what drives me. It's what makes me want to contribute. And I'm going to share a little bit about my background, how I became a librarian and what drives me. Obviously, I'm a gay Latino male. I came out in high school. I'm from Huntington Park, California, which is in southeast Los Angeles. And the one thing that is interesting is that my parents are Salvadoran, and really to be gay in the Salvadoran community is really one of the worst things you could be. That's the mentality. And I know this is true of other communities, the African American community, for example, other cultures. I know it's very tough for families. And today I give credit, my dad has passed away, but I give so much credit to my mom, who's from a small town in El Salvador called Sonsonate, and who accepts me and loves my husband, Dwayne. And so it's great. It's great to see that she has made this leap from coming from a very narrow-minded idea of what being gay is, or having a gay son, to really accepting me and my husband. So it's great. One of the things that I was fortunate about growing up in a country where libraries are part of our society is that I was able to find literature that spoke to me as a high school student, that that made me feel that I was okay. So I read The Best Little Boy in the World, and Confessions of a Rock Lobster, right? I read these books when I was really young in high school, and I was fortunate that the library was able to give me that. I feel that libraries today, with all of our technology advances and everything, are still about people. And how many students do we have here, by the way? Can you raise your hands? Great. And I feel, I want you to know that libraries, regardless of the technology that we have, are about people. And I've managed to, in my professional career, I've managed to always be about people, to always be interested in people. I've in my career, I've gone from technical services to public services, from an academic setting to a public library setting to a special library setting, and it's always been my mission to connect with people and to make it about people. And so in moving through my career, and I want to talk a little bit about that. It's been interesting that when I've worked in public libraries, the challenges and the opportunities that I've seen. In the public library world, how many of you want to be public librarians, by the way? Raise your hands. Great. Okay, not many of you. Okay. One of the things that I was able to do when I was a public librarian for the DC Public Library was that when I was in college, I worked as a student, I worked at the West Hollywood Library in LA. So West Hollywood, pretty gay, But what I gained there was really, an opportunity to see how the library collected information and organized information. And one of the things that they did was that they identified all the all the books with a sticker. I think they had a pink sticker or something like that. They outed the books. And what was so cool about that is that really early on, when I was a student, a student in college, I was able to see the system. When I went to the DC Public Library, one of the things I was interested in was identifying gay material for our community, especially because I worked at West End, which is in the George Washington University area, which is very close to the DuPont area. And I thought, we need to make it easier for our readers. I'm all about outreach. I mentioned about people. I want to connect with people. And so I wanted to identify the materials. And so I began to out the books. I went to Lambda Rising, which is a bookstore in DC, which is unfortunately now closed. But I went there and I bought rainbow stickers. and then I think I began with the GOBT task force reading list, 100 best books. I just went all over and started identifying books and tagging them, and it was a great project. One of the things that I also was able to do, as a public librarian there, was create book displays. And so book displays was a great way to make information available, because exhibitions, can be, or displays can be a serendipitous way of learning. You're just walking by and you see something and it can catch your attention. It can make you learn about something. So that was a great opportunity for me to do. If you have the opportunity to do a book display around, coming out day or bringing attention to the issue of bullying. I mean, it almost seems like this panel, this session today is like right on time with what is going on. And maybe it's late. Maybe we're late because one suicide is really too late. But I am so happy that this is taking place. I mean, this is not being done anywhere else, any other LIS school. So this is really a great step that we're doing. I've managed to obviously to always be myself. One of the things that I've done as I go from public to academic to special libraries is I focus on HR issues and public services, the people components. And so there are times when I've gone, into a job, into HR, and even though I know that benefits may not be available to the gay community, to domestic partners. For example, the reason I moved to DC was because I got a job at the Smithsonian. So when I went to HR, even though I know the federal government does not offer, this is again 11 years ago, I know they don't offer benefits. I feel as an advocate that I have to ask the question. Even if, for those of you who are here today, who are allies, who may not be gay, I challenge you, when you apply for that job, to ask that question. Do you offer domestic partner benefits? Even if it doesn't mean anything to you. I mean, but for the HR person to hear that, it is a big deal. I mean, we really need to be vocal, and I challenge you to think about that and to maybe if you feel comfortable enough to do it. So one of the things that I do is always ask the question. I think of myself as as a library advocate. I really want to make a commitment. Sometimes I feel that I carry the world on my back, and people want me to be Latino, and they want me to be gay, and they want me to be both at the same time. And sometimes I'm being called by a lot of people to wear all these hats and to try to do these things. And sometimes that pressure of being a color librarian, where you're seen as smart, as capable, and you get called on to do programming, and sometimes it's very challenging as a person of color. So, and I think it's a challenge that I enjoy, of course, but sometimes I have to say, okay, I can only do so much. It's only me, and I can't change the world for everybody. And so that's my own realization, my own baggage. So, as a person of color, for folks in academic I've also worked for academic libraries at George Mason University. I was initially the head of acquisitions and gifts, and then later the visual arts liaison librarian. When I was the head of acquisitions and gifts, I went from public services at DC Public Library to basically the backbone of the library, a department that paid bills all day, and I managed $5.2 million, which is a lot of bills to pay, and not a whole lot of interaction with students and faculty. I had a staff and everything, but not a whole lot of interaction with students and faculty. What was so great was that in an academic setting, there is still an opportunity for us to be advocates. And I got involved with the Office of Diversity Programs and Services. And in many ways, as you know, as one of the few Latino faculty members, I got involved with that organization. As a gay Latino male, as a gay member, I also as a gay professional, I also got involved, and that was great to have someone visible on campus, a person of color on campus, was such a strong statement. As I mentioned. The reason I mentioned that I was not, you know, was that I was in technical services and not, like my office was in the back. But this was key, because people saw me, students saw me as you know, the Latino students would see me as one of them. And even though I was not in a position of public service, I was not a faculty member, you know, helping students. I was not in student affairs. I was, you know, paying bills for the library. Students found me, and they would come to my office, and they would, you know, they would break down, and they would share their stories with me, and come out, and I would, you know, I would be there to listen to, you know, they wanted someone to listen to them. I would offer, well, if you need me to speak to your parents, I could do that for you. I would offer myself in you know, to help them in different ways as a librarian. And so even though I was in technical services, I didn't let that limit me in what I could do as a public person, as an advocate for my community, my various communities. You know, now, today I work for the Corcoran Gallery of Art, College of Art and Design in Washington, D.C., which is it's a library that serves both a museum and a college. And it's interesting because, you know, it's an art and design school, which is more, it's open-minded. Its students are, you know, are very creative. They feel like they can express themselves. But it's interesting that as they come to me, as gay students, gay researchers, some of them are still hesitant to ask that question. And you may not think about this, but sometimes someone is looking for, you know, gay content or something, and they're afraid to ask that reference question. And so I have students who are asking me a question in a almost a code, and I'm like, and I think, and because I know I can remember being in high school and asking, you know, do you have a book that is kind of like this, but, you know, like, you know, I remember being that kid. And so when I have students like this, I think, wow, this is one thing, it's 2010. Two, it's an art and design school, and they're still afraid. And so what I do is I try to, you know, welcome, I may try to, you know, make them feel really welcomed at the library, and that I'm an accessible person. I did the Safe Zone training. Are you guys familiar? Can you raise your hands if you're familiar with the Safe Zone training? If you're not familiar with that, if you're a student here, actually there was an exhibition display next door with more information on that. But that was a great opportunity for me to do that at George Mason. I know I'm running out of time here, but that was a great opportunity for me, because what it allowed me to do was to serve as a participant. I went through the program, but it also allowed me to contribute to, as you know, as a participant, and help people, the people who are going through it, to show them that there are other gay people on campus. But what I want to say is that I took that training that I got at Safe Zone. They give you this little sticker and all that. That idea, that little sticker, I've taken it with me to George Mason, and I have it in my door at the Corcoran. I have it, you know, I I speak about being a gay Latino male. Although Dr. Chu has pointed out that on the Corcoran's website, there's nothing about my GOBT work, but it's something that I will address and change. I do want to say, because I've been talking about advocacy, my profession and my contributions have been very shaped by my work in library associations, ALA, Reforma, which is the National Association to Promote Library Services to Latinos and the Spanish-speaking. I haven't been very active in the GOBT task force because I can only do so much. Remember, I was saying you get asked to be to do all these to do things, and you can only do so much. I think in my first year, as being for those of you students who are about to graduate, in my first year, I was asked to do all these projects, and I would say yes, 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 and then I would fall down on my face because it was way too much. Please learn from my mistake. Don't do that. So I have not been heavily involved with GOBT, even though I've been asked to run or to do things. What I have done is within Reforma, I recently served as president of the National Association, and one of the things that I've done is I've charged the YALSA committee, the Young Adults in Libraries, not the Reforma Teenage Committee. I can't remember the name of the acronym. I charged them to create services, to create a list, a bibliography of gay Latino material. My president's program, which was in Anaheim, California at the ALA conference, was on gay Latino services. So I've been giving back in other ways, even though it's not directly the GOBT task force. And I can't encourage you enough to get involved with ALA, with your professional associations, with your North Carolina Library Association, and get involved. And it's really a way to change the profession, to talk about the issues of public services, HR issues. There are ways to ask questions. One of the things that I learned from a great mentor of mine, Nancy Mattoon, at the West End Library was when you ask, when someone's interviewing, and when you are privileged to serve on a search committee, and sometimes I say privileged. Sometimes it feels like, oh my God, another search committee. But when you're privileged to serve on a search committee, one of the things that I do is ask, how do you feel working with a diverse community? And I mention GOBT and Latino and all that, because I want them to know that I care, and hopefully that my institution cares as well. So I know I'm out of time. Thank you. 19 minutes and 50 seconds.
Thank you. So next we'll hear from Trey Middlebrooks. Trey, do you want to come to the podium?
Can you hear me in the back? No? Now? Okay. Good afternoon. I go by Trey Middlebrooks, and I was asked to be the student representative on this panel. I was originally going to talk about book banning, but I decided that I wanted to talk about something a little bit more personal instead. I'm in my first semester of my second year at the UNCG MILS program. And one of the things that I really like about this program is that you have a lot of choice about what you can do your projects on. To me, I think it allows you to pursue your own research interest while you're learning about librarianship. So in my first year, I did several projects and papers centered around LGBTQ issues. I did a paper on banning books in the US or books that have been banned for having lesbian gay content in them. I also did a wiki resource guide specifically for librarians wanting to learn more about the LGBTQ community. Thank you, Dr. Bird. And a few other things. LGBTQ issues are something that I'm very interested in, and as a gay man, it's something that's very close to me, and so it just seemed right for me to focus on this topic. I also felt some additional pressures from myself to focus in this area because no one else in my classes was really talking about it. So, right or wrong, I felt a little responsibility for making sure that these issues had some part in whatever classroom I was in. However, when I would do my presentations in class, I had the small fear in the back of my head. The program's sort of small, and so I have a lot of classes with the same people, so, you know, a lot of people saw the same presentations that I was doing. And so I would imagine that while I was up talking, their eyes would be rolling, and they'd be like, oh, there's the gay guy talking about the gay stuff again. So, and just to be clear, no one in my classes ever gave me that indication whatsoever that's what they were thinking, but that's how I felt anyway. And that insecurity gave me a lot of anxiety. So I don't mind admitting that I don't want to be pigeonholed. I don't think anybody likes to be. I have a variety of interests, and I care about a lot of different things, and I didn't want my classmates or my professors to think that I only cared about this one topic. And worse, I didn't want them to think that I only cared about this topic because I'm a member of the community. So unfortunately, that anxiety got the better of me, so this semester I made a conscious decision to move away from LGBTQ issues in my classwork. I studied Web 2.0 technologies and library websites and personality disorders and a whole bunch of other things just to distance myself from this one-dimensional caricature that I sort of built up inside my head. But when I got a chance to participate in this summit, I really still want to do that. And at one of the committee meetings, we talked about miscommunication with the call for posters for this conference. Apparently, some people thought that we only wanted posters that had to do with LGBTQ subjects, and that was very much not the case. And some people were saying that they didn't want to submit anything because they didn't know anything about the subject. And that sort of disheartened me a little bit. And so I went home and I thought about it. And I had sort of I guess what my folks would call a come to Jesus moment. And I decided that if I want more people to care about LGBTQ issues, and if I want to work towards acceptance and better treatment for underrepresented populations in general, then I have to be proactive. There's not a choice in it. Like, it's what I have to do. It's a goal that means more to me than my own personal hang-ups about how I'm perceived by other people. I also realize that I have to be more active in recruiting backup. Now, when I mentioned before that many of my classmates were not doing projects and papers on LGBTQ issues, I did not mean that in an accusatory way at all. I recognize that it's a rare thing for people to just go out and learn about others who are different from themselves of their own accord. But I consider librarians to be exceptional people, so therefore, I'm holding you all to a higher standard. Okay? Since I have started this program, I have met several people working as and studying to become informational professionals. As a whole, I consider the majority of you to be intelligent, open-minded, and well-informed people. And I think that all of those qualities make you perfect candidates to be advocates and allies for the queer community. Your attendance at this conference suggests that you have, at the very least, an interest in learning more about LGBTQ issues. I'm very grateful for that, and I thank you for coming out. I am also personally asking you to take that one step forward. Take that interest and turn it into an action. So you can do that in a variety of ways. Write a paper, do a book display. There's lots of options. I just take the information that you learn from this conference and when we do the breakout sessions and do something with it. At the very least, talk to someone who was not able to attend about what you've learned here, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would have liked to see, whatever. Just start the conversation and start it here and take it out with you into the rest of the world. So does that sound like a reasonable request? Yeah. Okay. Good. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much for your time.
So now we'll have an opportunity for those of you in the audience, if you have some questions or comments that you'd like to pose to our panelists. We have about 15 minutes for you to do that. Who would like to begin?
I've got a question for Polly. It's really interesting hearing about the different types of archives, and that some of the more professional archives or the ones with larger institutions have to have better papers, that they have the rights to certain things. So with that in mind, then do you see it as a negative that some of these smaller private or smaller organizational archives are now working with the USC or working?
No, I think that's why the hybrid model is so popular, because you want some things out in the legal structure that exists, and some things just cannot exist there. Some queer material would not be preserved in that setting. So that's why I think the hybrids are very important. But it's also, it's an issue in a lot of queer documentarians and historians look at the empty spaces. There's a lot of focus on what's not archived. But we have to complicate that too to understand what might be archived but not usable. And in what settings are we out? If a lot of the community-based archives were built for people who were coming out to just kind of come in and explore and poke around, and they weren't necessarily built with this vast interest in documentary or journalism or history. They weren't built with that in mind, so maybe that's a good thing. That's why we need all different kinds of models.
I could add, because my talk was kind of about advocacy, and I didn't talk about collections or collection development. But one of the things that, as professionals entering the profession, one of the things that you're going to have the opportunity is to serve on committees who decide what to collect and what to preserve and what to make digital. And this is really an area that has is not sometimes it's falling through the margins. So we need to make sure that we're collecting these. So
I have a virtual question. Does anyone have any suggestions on how to make allies feel more welcome and get involved?
Can you repeat the question? We really are having a hard time here. Sorry. So could you speak up, please?
This is a virtual question. Does anyone have any suggestions on how to make allies feel welcome and get involved? Did you hear that?
I did, thank you.
I think it for me it depends on what type of institution you're in. I mean, I think you can always be inclusive. One of the things that I was thinking about when I was thinking back to my days in graduate school and writing the paper for my personnel class and on GLBT issues, one of the things that I remember was an email going out. It was a GLBT social, and the invitation that went out to the listserv, to the UCLA listserv, to all students, went out, and it sounded like, and I didn't send it, but it sounded like it was just for GLBT students, and it was. And that's just not the way I roll. So I was like, well, why does it have to be just GLBT? Why is it just, why isn't it everybody? Why isn't it just for our allies and everyone? And one of the things is that for the GLBT community, that we be cognizant about being inclusive, and including everyone to our events and things like that. In a professional setting, because I was in grad school, I think the communication has to be inclusive, but I think in addition to that, we have to create things like safe zone in academic settings, and maybe the model of safe zone, and if you want to explain what safe zone is, but if the model of safe zone could also be introduced in public libraries or special libraries, I think that would be helpful, because what it does, it allows people to just think about stereotypes that we may have and talk about them openly. You know, and it's a great way to create dialogue. Just creating dialogue is a step forward. One of the do you want to say what Safe Zone
Well, I
is?
can just briefly explain. Safe Zone's a type of programming. We do it here at UNCG, and it's done at many universities across the country, if you're not familiar with the programming. And it's designed to create allies for the LGBT community. So it's designed to help you to explore your own biases, your own feelings perhaps regarding the queer community, and then to help you to see how you can overcome those and how you can be of practical assistance to LGBT people. So if that's a brief explanation of exactly how it's formatted.
And it's a wonderful explanation. And I think that would be a great step in any setting to take.
I'll take a moment here. Like Trey was saying, you know, make it your homework. You know, you can have intellectual curiosity, even if you don't have particular social access or interest. In addition to like maybe doing your next assignment with queer issues in mind, you might consider submitting a paper or a panel. It's a kind of short notice, but there's this ALMS, Archives, Libraries, Manuscripts, and Special Collections Conference in Los Angeles in May 2011, and the deadline is November 19th for proposals, real short proposals, 250 words, and you know, your little resume or CV, a little brief biography. But if you go to the Mazer Lesbian Archives website, Google that up, then you'll find the entire call. But I think there are a lot of intellectual opportunities for doing this kind of work. It's a big new field with a lot of fascinating questions that apply not only to thought about queer archiving, but archives in general. The structure of our archive is evolving, and there's just a tremendous amount of thought to be applied to how digitization and identification are going to function together, for example.
I could say something too, and that's that when I got to UNCG 22 years ago, there were 3 lesbians, myself, 1 straight man, and 1 straight woman in my department, and I am now the only gay person in my department, so we have really diversified. And I'm very proud of that. I'm not so proud of the fact that John D'Amelio, who was teaching here when I came here, was never asked to teach but 1 human sexuality course the whole time he was here, but we all know how historians are. And he was in the history department, but he was, it's very interesting now going to the LGBT event at Chicago 2 ALAs ago. John was speaking, and I know him quite well, and he was telling this crowd of people who, and John's about my age, and you know, had on his coat and tie and all that stuff, you know, which in our days was très gay, and of course now everybody has tattoos and piercings and, you know, all that good stuff, and spiked hair, multicolored rainbow hair, and
You still look good, Jim.
well, I know, but you know, it's the pain. I don't want to go through the pain, and so he was saying that, you know, there really are more important things this year than gay marriage, and of course that started everybody really upset. There's nothing more important than gay marriage. What are you talking about? So it's a very interesting thing to sit back and watch how the issues change over time, and are yet they're the same too. And I'm just thrilled that I'm so thrilled that, you know, I almost don't even think about my first reaction when the question was asked. Stacy was, you know, give them a feather boa. You know, I mean, give them, you know, throw some sequins on them. I don't know. I mean, sure. I mean, that was Barbara always said, you know, we gave the best parties anywhere, and she said, oh, I don't care if she calls herself a lesbian or gay or what. She says, I just want to know, you know, are you home? You know, we're having a party, have fun. And that was kind of her attitude. And I think that all you can do is, I've never been graced with gaydar, and someone would ask me, is he gay? I said, well, I don't know. He hasn't stuck his tongue down my throat, but I'm sure if he does, I'll know. I mean, because there are all kinds of variations, and I think that's what I love about the LGBTQIA and Safe Zone is that, we have people who seem gay who aren't. It's like the old Saturday Night Live skit, Pat, and all of that stuff. It's, it's that old mess. So enjoy life. It's so short, Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? Have another question?
I'm looking at things from the school library and youth services perspective, which I know isn't any of your areas, but a lot of the things that you're saying are applicable, obviously. I'm wondering if people who have had the experience of being homosexual and had the experience of being in a school growing up, what do you wish that your own school libraries had done better?
My school libraries did everything right. The librarians were my friends. They were the only people I could talk to, and I think that's why I became a librarian. They were sympathetic. They may not have understood what the problem was or what the material needs were, but I knew how to find books. But I think if I could, I will say that there used to be an argument that, you think being gay is bad. It's nothing compared to being of color. That was the argument. And yet, if you're ever in a playground and you're gay, you know that kids know that you're gay. And they know there's something about you that's different. And I think if the consciousness that is arising right now over bullying is just the best thing I've seen happen since I was born. I think that's really important because that's what it's about. And people get bullied for all different kinds of reasons. But it's something, and adults bully too. Turn on television some night. It's just like, somehow I hope people get that consciousness where they can tell someone, and maybe that's part of what we're doing today, is learning how to confront people who have completely different views than us and who really believe that we are morally and in every other way, wrong, and have a dialogue with them, because it's not an easy thing to do, but it can be done. I meet with a student over lunch who is Catholic and very conservative, and she really doesn't approve of me at all, and she's getting a library degree and she's teaching children in a private school, and I respect her a great deal. She's one of my very favorite people. And but we do not agree, and so we meet for lunch now and then and talk. And I come away feeling a little bit bruised, but she probably does too. So it's a fair trade-off, and that's something all of us have to learn to do. We have to learn how to talk with people who don't like us, maybe.
Yeah, okay. When I came out a couple of years ago, the library wasn't even a consideration for where I would go to get information. I went to the internet, which was the wrong thing to do because there's so much information out there. I didn't know which one was right, and I probably picked up some things that I had to unlearn, but that was sort of the point that I didn't know that was. I didn't think of the library as a safe space where I could go and get information.
Do you now? Do you think it's safer now? Do you see how it could be? Or?
I see how it could be. I definitely could, but I think that it's. I see the role of maybe a reference person, if someone's there to guide you through like what specific issue it is you're wanting.
But what is it, the threat of like going to the library and then that is a public act, whereas surfing the net is a private act?
Yeah.
Is that basically it? There's the danger in that the approach to the reference or the book or checking out the book with the sticker or the bright orange covers in that Arno series.
Because if I couldn't, if I couldn't even admit to other people, like that would pretty much be an outing right there to go into a library.
Public
Yeah.
act.
So.
But the library spaces are built for both private and public acts.
Sure.
Thank the Lord.
That's one of the things that project where I, put stickers on the book. That's actually where that project would fall flat on its face, because then there are people who don't want to be identified with getting that book. In fact, I know we probably have, you're a little bit younger, but we probably all have friends who have probably driven miles from their small towns to be able to go buy a book or check out a book in a more urban setting because they're too embarrassed to do it in their neighborhood libraries. I mean, I know people who are, who have gone through that. And so, I was fortunate that, my public library, and it wasn't a school library. For some reason, I just, I used the public library as the main library. I'm also from a product of the LA Unified School District, which, school libraries are not what they should be. But, I was fortunate that the public library was my vehicle. It gave me the opportunity to dream and see other worlds. So I was thankful that somebody was collecting in that area.
Another question?
One more virtual question. Do any of you have any ideas for navigating coworkers who are negatively inclined towards queers, especially if you work with teens? Teenagers.
High hormonal.
Diplomatic answer for that.
Well, I always think of Mahalia Jackson. Pray for them and let the church roll on.
The implication is that somebody's having trouble with a coworker, and the trouble is over working with a young adult audience. Yeah. You just have to do it. I think that libraries, the profession has an ethic, a standard of maintaining the privacy of people who come to borrow books, come to ask questions. And I think that we need to reinforce that ethic and remember with each kind of level of service, be it virtual or in person, that privacy is going to be important to a lot of questions involving sexuality and health and economic status, and privacy is crucial to providing the services that we provide for people in difficult situations. And I think sometimes I see it slipping a little bit. Our privacy concerns in the profession aren't as front and center as I think they might be in that regard.
And part of that is social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, I think that actually will end our time that we have for questions. Thank you all for your questions, and thank you for the panelists for all that they had to say, and also answering the questions that individuals posed. And would you like to join me in thanking our panelists for their contributions?
So I'm next, and as soon as I get this up to a page where I have my little slide, we can do that. So again, we're going off to the to our discussions, and I will say them out loud for those of you who are oral learners, which I'm not. The red group will be in the Phillips room. The yellow group will be in the Benbow room. These are all on this floor. Green will be in Ferguson, and blue will also be in Ferguson. There's 2 groups in Ferguson, and then one group is staying here, and you should have a big N on your group thing here.